Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Council Chambers. It's good to see some folks here. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll start with an invocation, which we observe with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent,
Here.
Clegg,
Here.
Halliburton,
Here.
Sanchez,
Here.
Thompson,
Here.
Woodings,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Next up, we have a request for approval of the minutes from the work session and regular meeting of March 30th.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes of the work session and regular meetings on March 30th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
And now we have under special business, first up, the revised findings for CAR 20-7 and CUP 20-23. Celine, have you joined us via Zoom? Hello, welcome.
Hi. Apologies for any background noise. Someone hit a water main in our neighborhood, so a little fun excitement for tonight. Let me share my screen. All right, can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. As you'll recall, you approved a rezone and upheld an appeal on March 16th for a mixed-use building along 4th and Idaho. As there were conditions with or additions within the motion to approve, we've come back with revised findings for you to adopt this evening. One thing that did come up, which we clarified, was the proposal for tree mitigation. So you'll see on the screen the condition that we did propose versus the updated condition that we'd like to adopt this evening, to just clarify that not only the trees on site are to be preserved and maintained, but the trees in the immediate vicinity as well. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
thank you. I'm the one who suggested the tree mitigation condition and worked with Celine on recognizing that in addition to the trees on site, there are 2 trees very nearby that could well be impacted by the construction. And it was always my intent to also protect those. So I think that this does that.
All right, any other? All right, well, I think a motion is probably next in order.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the revised findings on CAR 20-0007 and CUP 20-00023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor, just to clarify, that's as with the changes presented.
Yes, the record reflects that as well.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
though I did not vote in the affirmative for the rezone, I will be voting in the affirmative for the revised findings.
All right, clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up, we have Resolution 15021. This is ratifying the current public health order. I'll just say a couple things on this. First off, it's a replica of the language that we've had now for the last 30 days and potentially just before that. And we've been asked, when we would lift this or how we're thinking about this. And so right now, as long as Central District Health has an advisory in place, strongly urging all residents of Ada County to wear masks, we as a city intend, at least for the foreseeable future, to have our mask mandate in place for several, and the partnership that we have with businesses for several reasons. One, we think it's really important that we follow, as well as the Central District Health Advisory, the urging of the leaders of the medical community that are saying masking is important. Two, we have a great partnership with businesses to allow events to happen and to funnel those through the Central District Health as a part of this order to allow more things to happen in this community in safe and effective ways. And so it further protects businesses while protecting people. And then, of course, three, we want to keep businesses open. And so this helps businesses be able to say, the city requires this of us. So there's more certainty when people are out and about in our community. And so just on that, this is a continuation of what we've had. It includes the events partnership with the business community, the enforcement element, and then the requirement related to masks, as well as the language that's different than the Central District Health, the Ada County Health Advisory, because it relates to the airport. Because that's something unique that we oversee.
Madam Mayor, I move that council approves Resolution 150-21, a resolution ratifying Public Health Emergency Order 20-15A enacted March 30th, 2021, and providing an effective date.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to take the opportunity to remind everyone that everyone in the state is eligible for a COVID-19 vaccine, that we have enough vaccine supply to supply the entire country with vaccine in the coming months, and that this is our path out of this. So the end is in sight. These types of orders are in place for a reason until then, but anyone can get a vaccine, and anybody who is confused about that process is welcome to reach out, I'm sure, to any of us, and we'll help you get it done.
Oh, and on that, on the 8th, the Boise City Airport is partnering with Crush the Curve. We're partnering by providing a giant parking lot with Crush the Curve that's providing vaccines for any member of the public that qualifies to sign up. It's actually anticipated that it'll be the largest mass vaccine event in the state so far. And so any member of the public that has yet to get an appointment could go jump online at Crush the Curve and sign up and head on out to the airport.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I will be getting my shot at that event. And just to echo what my colleagues have said so far about the vaccine, as far as I know, I believe folks are able to get that for free. And so money should not be an issue. And we strongly encourage folks to look into that opportunity.
All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Thompson. Woodings.
Yes.
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up, we have a consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Thompson. Woodings.
Yes.
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Now we move on to ordinances. Ordinances on the first reading. Looks like we have one.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on first reading be read by number and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Without objection?
ORD-11-21, an ordinance CAR 20-00004 for property located at 13984 West Jasmine Lane, Boise, Idaho 83713. Amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance from open lands A-1 to general commercial with design review and development agreement C-2DDA, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and provide an effective date.
Thanks. Next up, we have bills on the second, ordinances on the second reading. It looks like three of them.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on the second reading calendar be read by number and title only and filed for the third reading calendar.
Without objection?
Madam Mayor,
ORD.
Yes. Was that Councilmember Hallie? I just turned off my mic, sorry. Was that Councilmember Halliburton?
yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Before we move this to the third reading, I had enough people reach out today that I feel like I owe a response about concerns about the parking ordinance. I don't have the number right in front of me on my Zoom screen right now. And after getting all those responses, I was able to take a look at the existing ordinance that's in place as well as the proposed one. I was also able to talk with Councilmember Bajent. I believe that the new ordinance is an improvement on the past one as far as what the intent is trying to do. And so I believe that while it may not be perfect, I think that it is better than what we have in place. And I think perfect is a high bar to shoot for. And I think that this will do a lot of the things that the original ordinance was intended to do. So for folks who are concerned, I think that while I want to make sure that I validate those concerns, I also think that this is going to improve what's already in place. So I'll be voting to move this to the third reading.
All right, I just want to clarify from a procedural perspective, this is a unanimous consent request. So you are not objecting to reading the title. You are not asking us to read the full bill, but you wanted to acknowledge the correspondence you'd received and the due diligence you did.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's correct.
All right, thank you. And then without objection, we'll go ahead and read the number and titles of the bills, ordinances.
ORD-8-21, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 6, Chapter 10, Article A, parking regulations to amend the blackface definition in Section 4, to amend Section 11 to refine vehicle extended parking prohibition, to amend Section 12 to refine non-vehicular extended parking prohibition, to add a new Section 13 that requires movement from a blackface after the expiration of the metered or signed parking period, to renumber all the sections subsequent to the newly added Section 13 and provide an effective date. ORD-9-21, an ordinance CAR 20-00014 for property located at 313 South Orchard Street and 5151 and 5007 West Franklin Road, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in Section 1 of this ordinance from A-1 Open Lands Park to PCD Pedestrian Commercial with Design Review Overlay, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and provide an effective date. ORD-10-21, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 10, Chapter 4, Sections 1-2, 1-5, 2-1 through 2-6, 3, 3-1 through 3-6, 4-3, and 4-1, deleting Section 4-4 and adding Section 1-6 and 2-7 to add legal authority, to provide definitions, to add and amend scope of applicability, to reorganize and amend residential collection, container, trash, recycling, and compost provisions, including limitations to bulky items for collection, to add service accounts for non-property owners, to reorganize and amend commercial collection, container frequency, and service agreement provisions, to clarify construction and demolition hauling provisions, to amend general requirements and prohibitions, to reorganize and amend provisions relating to franchise agreements and permits, to amend provisions relating to fees and services, approving a summary of the ordinance, and provide an effective date.
Next up, we have two ordinances on third reading.
Madam Mayor, I move that further reading of Ordinance 6-21 and Ordinance 7-21 be dispensed with and the record reflect that they have been read the third time in full.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thompson. Woodings.
Yes.
Agent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries. ORD-6-21, an ordinance CAR 20-00012 for property located at 921 North Shamrock Street, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classifications of real property particularly described in Section 1 of this ordinance from single-family residential R-1A to single-family residential R-1C, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and provide an effective date. ORD-7-21, an ordinance CAR 20-00011 for property located at 1511 South Robert Street, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance from general commercial C-2D to residential office with design review and development agreement R-ODDA, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of said zone change and provide an effective date.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that ordinance -6-21 and ordinance -7-21 be approved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Clerk, will you call the roll?
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
yes,
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. We have no unfinished business, so we are moving on to new business. We have one public hearing for the evening, and it is Councilmember Thompson's proposed changes to update the animal code. And with that, just actually before I hand it over to you, Councilmember, there's a couple people in the audience, so I'll start first with people on the list and then move back and forth to cover the three of you so that if you want to head home before this is all over, you're able to. And then for those of you that signed up in advance, I'll call your names. And then if after all of this, there are more people that are here, and we'll check in again, but just so you know how it works. If there are more people on Zoom that want to testify that I didn't call, just raise the little Zoom hand and our clerk will call your name and then we'll hear your testimony. And with that, we have two presenters, of course, Councilmember Thompson and then Dr. Rosenthal from the Idaho Humane Society.
Outstanding. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, good afternoon in person and online. It's an honor to have you here tonight to discuss what amounts to 2.5 years of work. And jokingly, what has begun to feel like my life's work. It's a complete rewrite of our animal code. In essence, repeal and replace of our existing code to have it more appropriately reflect what I have termed a compassionate animal code, more in line with Boise's kind-hearted values. I want to thank three individuals in particular for their immense help and heavy lifting to get to this point. And that's Jen Patino, who serves in our legal department at the city of Boise, Jeff Rosenthal, the CEO of the Idaho Humane Society, and Lisa Kaufman, the Idaho Director for the Humane Society of the United States. You will hear from both Jeff and Lisa tonight. Jeff is after me. These are all common sense changes, nothing radical, nothing that hasn't shown to be successful in other communities and states around the country. Boise is the center of the universe when it comes to dogs, a place where adoptions usually have to be brought into our community from other locations just to meet the heavy demand to add them as furry family members in Boise. I know all of my colleagues I serve with either have or have had companion animals in the past and share my passion for their welfare. We live in a state that does very little for our companion animals in terms of animal laws. Idaho ranks 48th of 50 in the country in terms of animal protection laws. So it's really up to us at the local level to invoke change and protect our furry companions. I reached out to the Idaho Attorney General's office some time ago, and they noted that municipalities have clear authority to regulate in this area. Over the last 2.5 years, I've worked closely with animal welfare groups, animal advocates, handlers of specialty animals such as raptors, kennel clubs, and enthusiasts throughout our community. I attended an animal law conference to gather input from experts across the country. This code is a reflection of that work and outreach. This code has been before council several times, as well as mayor and council leadership multiple times, and has integrated input received from all of these meetings. It's had extensive involvement from our legal team to ensure it was written in a clear and enforceable manner. The code can be generally broken into two categories: general enforcement and animal cruelty. I will speak more high level regarding the general enforcement category. Dr. Rosenthal will be speaking next, and we'll cover several of those pieces in a bit more detail. In essence, we dramatically improve the code by adding new definitions, clarifying the role of our animal enforcement agency, Idaho Humane Society, cleaning up the dog licensing component, and adds a 2 or 3 year option, adds a rabies vaccine requirement or proof through an antibody titer test that shows immunity to rabies. It clarifies and ensures adequate protections for service animals, and it updates the non-commercial kennel license. And let me speak to this license. I did not add this license to our code. Many might know I'm not a big fan of this license. It has been in the code though for decades, and it's not new. It's a very common license in communities across Idaho and the United States. Also, there's nothing preventing you from having more than 4 dogs or cats. How many you own is totally your choice. I actually once had to obtain one myself because I exceeded 4 animals in my home. I found the requirement to go door to door and ask my surrounding neighbors for permission to have, at the time, 3 dogs and 2 indoor cats, very intrusive. What I have done with this code is add an additional option where the city clerk's office sends a mailer to one's surrounding neighbors, rather than require that individual to go door to door and notify them of your license. This removes the intrusive nature of knocking on doors, sometimes venturing onto private property or knocking on doors of folks that simply don't want to be bothered. It also increases the number of cats to 5 before requiring a non-commercial kennel license. I will also note that this license is not related to animal hoarding. Animal hoarding is not tied to a number of animals one can have, but rather the treatment of those animals. This code changes a vicious dog to dangerous and potentially dangerous dog and rewrites the approach and process for impounding, registering, confining, controlling, and disposing of such dogs. Dr. Rosenthal will likely speak to this a bit more in his section. It updates animal nuisance to better address issues such as barking dogs, to clarify standards and simplify the process for violations. It makes it easier to enforce and makes it fair to both the dog owner and the neighbor. Now to address the 800-pound gorilla in the room, pardon the pun, but this is the section I am most passionate about. And this is the rewrite of our animal cruelty sections of the code. We add a definition for animal hoarding so that it can be adequately enforced. My dog Soma is blind now due to diabetes, and those conditions are tied to the fact that she was a rescue from an animal hoarder. Hoarding has horrible impacts on the actual animals throughout their life, and that should be recognized as animal cruelty. Animal hoarding is not based on a specific number of animals you own, but rather is focused on a situation where the owner is unable to provide the minimal standards of nutrition, sanitation, and veterinary care for those animals. The code's cruelty to animal provisions is amended to better define various types of animal cruelty and to assist with better enforcement. Violations have been revised and strengthened. Also, I will note that this section of animal cruelty is not specific only to dogs and cats, but applies to all companion animals, such as rabbits as well. It doesn't preclude other types. It's also important to note that clear studies show that individuals that engage in animal cruelty frequently turn that abuse towards humans, such as domestic violence. Specifically, this is the addition of common sense standards, such as these are all added in this new code. Food and water in sufficient quantity, proper veterinary care, which a reasonably prudent person would deem necessary to relieve or prevent suffering or disease, a clean and wholesome environment in which to live, free from excessive waste, prevention of severe matting of fur, severe overgrown nails, hooves that is a reasonable person would know would cause pain or injury to that animal. Any person who beats, maims, mutilates, knowingly or intentionally injures, wounds, or tortures an animal, overworks an animal, dumps or abandons an animal, willfully administers any poisonous substance to an animal. Many have asked why I didn't include something regarding dogs in the back of pickup trucks, but it does include this by including situations where such transport is in a manner that is reckless or dangerous to the animal or public. And lastly, it notes that exposing an animal for prolonged periods of time in extreme heat or cold that result in injurious conditions or death as diagnosed by a veterinarian is also animal cruelty. Many want the penalty to be much harsher for animal cruelty, myself included, but municipalities do not have the authority to make it a felony with required jail time. That is the state's authority. We can fine and require forfeiture of the animal. The max fine we can place is $1,000. I put in this revision that the absolute minimum should be no less than $250. If this council feels we should make the minimum a higher amount, I would support that. This code also expands the list of prohibited animals and prohibits exotic animals from being displayed or used in a circus or animal act show. Other locations in Idaho, including Ketchum and Blaine, have taken similar measures. It's a known fact that treatment of animals in these shows, specifically the exotic animals such as elephants, large cats, and bears, is animal cruelty. Some of you may have seen one of these, maybe not. This is called a bullhook. You can tell those online, it's an extremely sharp device. This is what they use to, quote unquote, train an elephant. They stab it, they poke it, they prod it, they pull it with it to get it to lay on its head and get on the roller skates and move around. This is how they train them. If you've been to the circus in the past and you see them with white paint on them, it's usually to hide the sores that were caused by this device. It's long overdue that we end this practice of bears on roller skates and elephants standing on their head for our sheer entertainment. The life of pain and suffering these animals face is beyond anything we can imagine. This adds a section as well addressing feral cats and cats at large intended to humanely control the feral cat population. Jeff will speak to this change in more detail, but I will note that this is not implementing a new practice. This has already been done by the Idaho Humane Society for many years, and we were well aware of it, and with great success in saving cats that would normally go unadopted or be euthanized. This practice returns healthy cats that are already being cared for, at least to some extent, or living healthy on their own after first being spayed and neutered and provided appropriate vaccinations. Also, I want to emphasize that this does not allow individuals to let their cat roam outside. That was not allowed in the code prior to this, and this does not change with any of these edits. Now, we know many people do let their cats roam outside of their property. Enforcement of cats, however, has always been complaint-driven, not an animal enforcement officer driving around looking for cats. So to clear up any confusion around this issue, that rule still remains in effect, and those that allow their cats outside remain in the same situation after this code revision as they did before it. There's always risks involved if you allow your cat to roam freely, and those risks don't change with this change. This also creates a new section to prohibit the sale of non-shelter dogs and cats at retail pet stores as the transfer of such animals on public property. This closes a major puppy mill loophole. This is not the PetSmarts or the Zamzos of the world, which are adopting shelter animals. This is commercially bred animals, which primarily come from pet mills. There is currently no retail pet stores in Boise. There have been in the past that have been tied to these practices, but there are none now. So this is the perfect time to pass such a measure. Pet stores do not get their animals from responsible breeders. In fact, responsible breeders won't sell their pets because it's not financially viable and they don't sell to third parties. This is the same rule employed by virtually all of the breed clubs of the Animal Kennel Club. Nearly 400 other cities, counties, and states have passed this same measure. This also ends the horrible practice of parvo puppies sold from cardboard boxes. It's a partnership with private entities is what this is. You might have remembered this story a few years back at Cabela's, where dogs were being adopted from a cardboard box from their parking lot. And many of those were tied to having parvo and medical conditions that the owners now would be faced to deal with for the rest of their life or end up adopting that animal to a shelter. Well, this is a partnership in that now that Cabela's has taken this step and said, no, this isn't going to happen anymore in our parking lot. That's their right. It's private property. If they push those boxes out to the sidewalks and the streets and the alleyways, this says, no, you can't. So it partners with private. This is a specific to parks, streets, alleys, sidewalks, or other public right-of-ways, and does not impact animals sold on private property. This code prohibits leaving animals unattended in cars under weather conditions that endanger their well-being and creates a Good Samaritan immunity from penalties, damages, criminal penalties, and civil liability for those who rescue animals from life-threatening conditions. The same Good Samaritan law has been enacted statewide in 30 states in the United States, and it's a well-tested and successful method for saving animals in these conditions. I want to emphasize that this does not allow individuals to begin breaking windows anytime they see an animal in a vehicle. It does not allow vigilantism. It has strict criteria whereby they must first call 911 and explain the situation. If the police can't get there in a reasonable time period, they can take action. The recorded call will be available when this occurs. Also, this will require some additional training at BPD to ensure they are fully aware of the change. People have asked about situations where the windows are down or AC is running in the car. Those are situations that don't create a situation where the dog is in danger. So again, this doesn't allow that type of response. Comments were collected from the public on the proposed code changes for an entire month. Support for the proposed changes was overwhelmingly in favor. We received a massive haul of 763 comments with an 88% support rate. But for Boise specific comments, a truly unprecedented 90% of those submitted feedback were in support and only 8% in opposition. Comments amassed a whopping 872 pages of feedback. I read every single page. The most common comments received were saying, about time, finally, and long overdue. Most of the opposition within the 8% of those that provided feedback were more so just misunderstandings about the code changes, which I have already clarified in my comments tonight. But I will note just a few more odds and ends that this code is not, to ensure that everyone is fully understands. This code does not impact or affect agricultural production animals, nor responsible breeders, dog shows, or rodeos. This code does not phase out animal control officers. It just revises their titles in the code. It removes a section requiring the Idaho Humane Society to hold a hearing if they propose changes to the code, because that is not the role of the Idaho Humane Society. They would never hold a hearing. That is the role of the City Council, which is what we're doing tonight, holding that public hearing. Lastly, on a bit of a humorous note, several people thought this code was going to no longer allow mice as pets. That's not the case. You can have all the mice that you would like. Based on outstanding feedback we've received from both my colleagues on council and experts within our community, I'm proposing several edits tonight that weren't in the version that came before council during the last work session. Some of these from my colleagues, like the first one from Council President Clegg, replace beware of dog sign requirement with specifically the beware of dangerous or potentially dangerous dog, and cites the code. In section 5111, there's a contradiction between domestic and wild. This proposed change would read, the domestic animal the dog attacks, if this were to happen, or kills, is a wild fowl or domestic fowl at large, where the dog would not be held liable if it, for that damage, as long as the animal that it was not on someone's private property. And this is not a change though, but rather just a clarification within the code. It hasn't changed what was originally there. Section 5119 would add hypoxia to the list of what a veterinarian may examine an animal for to show evidence of animal cruelty, which is when the brain is deprived of oxygen. In section 516, we would make an allowance for dog tags that includes the same information as the city issued license would have, but it's an individual builds it right into the dog's collar, like Councilmember Bajan does with his animals. And animal control had some concerns about this as they rely on looking for the tag, but hanging down. But really, if they're going to be checking to see if the tags are up to date, right? Then they're going to have to look at that tag anyways. So it's common sense change, and I know several that are already implementing it, and it's very effective. Also, the enforcement shouldn't be about a tag, but rather about whether the dog is actually licensed. Item 5, there were concerns raised about the timeline for notifications of impoundment in section 5120 and an owner not receiving a mailed letter in time. The current draft states 3 or 5, depending on the type of animal. However, following consultation with many experts at the Idaho Humane Society, I do not propose an edit to this wording. Most dogs are recommended reconnected with their owners within that 5 days, but cats are rarely reconnected with an owner at all and need to be returned to their original place found to avoid getting sick. Also requiring an additional 2 days of impoundment for cats would be an extraordinary increase in cost for the Idaho Humane Society, with minimal or no increase in them being reconnected with their owner, if one exists. Next, section 5113, we changed the age of cat from 6 months to 4 months and removed the language about a 48-hour hold for impoundment. 4 months is a safe age for spay and neutering of a cat. So, and also a 48-hour impoundment hold would be very detrimental to the actual cats in some situations. Cats that are microchipped or collared or show obvious signs that they are an individual's domestic pet are retained longer by Idaho Humane Society, have that 3-day retention rate. But the reconnection rate for cats, feral cats with their owners is extremely low, in the single digits. Returning those cats to their original environment as soon as possible is vital to their health and their well-being. In section 518, we would strike the last sentence regarding the feral cat programs managed by a colony caretaker. This change is proposed to strike a balance between the rights of property owners and the ability for Idaho Humane Society to actually mitigate what's deemed problem cats. There would be no way for Idaho Humane Society to actually enforce that piece, so it must be removed. In section 5111 at the very bottom here, we should strike the language allowing a dog found to be potentially dangerous to be ordered to be spayed or neutered. This should only apply to those found to be dangerous. This was a recommendation from AKC, the American Kennel Club, and we were all in agreement with it. I've heard great demand for adding a section on tethering. So that is what we do with this language before you. We utilize very common sense language that allows someone to, for example, tether their dog while they run into a gas station buy a drink or snack. But really, it's about stopping someone from leaving their dog chained up all day unattended while they're at work, which is a very dangerous situation for the animal. Next slide. Also, after hearing from and discussing potential concerns with multiple experts in the field, including General Counsel at Animal Defenders International, who performed an in-depth review of the entire code and proposed changes, a potential issue has been identified that creates a loophole that may allow shows with prohibited exotic animals to still come to Boise. With some states, when an animal is brought in for a display show, they will go through the Idaho Department of Agriculture for approval, and this creates that loophole. Also, exception number 9 provides that same loophole by allowing things that are normally or commonly considered acceptable, which a circus could argue meets their type of show. The language below number 9 is simply not necessary. We already provide all of the explicit exceptions and don't need to take it farther by describing the exceptions the way we do in that final sentence. The public has also identified a handful of grammar and word edits that I won't read here, but we'll submit to with the final motion tonight, and can send to legal by email. They don't change the meaning of the code in any way, and they just fix mixed words and grammatical errors. That completes my presentation. I really appreciate it. I will take questions, but I think it would be great to first hear from Jeff Rosenthal, because he speaks to the administrative side and it might answer a lot of those before we get to that. Thank you.
Hi there, Jeff.
Hello, Mayor McLean, members of the council. My name is Jeff Rosenthal, Boise resident, veterinarian, and CEO of the Idaho Humane Society. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the proposed amendments to Boise City Code Chapter 5. And we appreciate having had the opportunity to provide some input on the project. And I want to thank Councilmember Thompson especially for his leadership on this effort and the work of the city staff. The Idaho Humane Society supports the approval of the ordinance as it represents in total an improved law for animal welfare enforcement in the city. And this is a large project which covers a lot of issues. All of them are important to our organization, but limited time means I'll focus on what we believe are the most significant changes to the ordinance. Idaho Humane Society has owned and operated the shelter that functions as the municipal shelter for Boise since 1941, and assumed enforcement powers for this code by contract in the mid-1970s. So one of the most impactful changes to the code, and no doubt the most controversial, regards cats at large. The ordinance falling within 5-1-8 and 5-1-13E, general animal nuisances. So for background, in the early 2000s, taking in stray cats by the shelter was still considered by council and city administrative staff to be a purely Humane Society function. It was at the discretion of the Idaho Humane Society to impound any stray cats. It was not part of the city-funded municipal animal control program. But that changed as the city council became more and more attuned to their constituents' concerns about the welfare of cats and nuisance issues involving cats. In the past decade, it's become understood that the efforts of shelters to remove free-roaming cats from the environment has had no impact on the overall population of free-roaming cats. And mainstream, usually government-owned and operated municipal animal control agencies also now understand that a healthy cat is far more likely to return to its home if left where it was found, or returned to where it was found through a method called shelter, neuter, return, or return to field. The National Animal Control Association, the largest association of animal control professionals and the nation's authority on municipal animal control, recently released a policy statement saying that the indiscriminate pickup or admission of healthy free-roaming cats for any purpose other than shelter, neuter, return fails to serve the goal of community animal management and protection programs, and as such is a misuse of time and public funds and should be avoided. So as Councilman Thompson alluded to, in a meeting in June of 2017, Idaho Humane Society informed Boise City Council on the inception of a return to field pilot project. At that time, the save rate for cats at the Idaho Humane Society was 61%, which means nearly 40% of impounded cats were euthanized in the 12 months prior to that meeting. As of today, the save rate for cats over the past 12 months is 94%. This project is a major contributor to Boise no longer being a community that euthanizes adoptable pets and no longer euthanizes hundreds of cats each year that we know actually have homes and owners. Animal control in peer communities, including Spokane, Portland, Reno, Salt Lake City, Idaho Falls, Pocatello, and many, many others are all currently implementing either a leave-in-place policy or a return to field program to manage free-roaming community cats. Now, in the first method, a leave-in-place policy is one in which only sick or injured free-roaming cats are admitted to the shelter, while no healthy cats are impounded whatsoever. With the second method, shelter, neuter, return, or return to field, animal control or the public may bring any free-roaming cat to the municipal shelter for potential but not guaranteed return to the area in which it was found after shelter veterinarians ensure the animal is sterilized, is ear tipped, and the cat is in sufficiently good body condition and health. So the Idaho Humane Society has obviously had success with shelter, neuter, return and believes in the benefit of ensuring that as many cats in the community are spayed and neutered as possible. The new ordinance codifies the ability to provide this non-lethal approach while still providing the ability to address welfare and nuisance issues on a case-by-case basis. So moving on to section 51-11, dangerous and potentially dangerous dogs, or what is currently termed the vicious dog law.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Rosenthal, I just had a question before we leave cats.
Sure, no problem.
I just have a question about, so the cats that are spayed or neutered, they've got the little ear clip.
Yes, correct.
So my question is about that. So for example, I have my cat Murray that I adopted from the Humane Society in 2009. And so he's neutered, he's got the little ear clip, but that was 2009. It's now 2021. And he likes to hang outside, that's his domain. So if for some reason he was to be picked up by the Humane Society, I'm wondering how long those chips last.
They last forever. They last the life of the animal. So it's great that your cat has a microchip because so many cats that come into our shelter don't have any identification at all. And as you know, every single animal that we adopt out has a microchip in it, which has in fact improved the return rate for cats. Nationally, only 2% of cats are returned to owners. Right now in Boise, we're returning about 6% from microchip identification.
Great, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Since we've stopped here, Jeff, why don't I ask my question now? It's a related question. Is there any chance, I've shared with Councilmember Thompson my concern that the change in language in this doesn't make any accommodation in the language in the ordinance for cats that are chipped or may have a collar. And I wonder if, what would be the best practice there, or the thing for us to do? Can you identify if there's a chip in a cat in the field? And could you, for instance, just leave in field if that cat does have a collar or has a chip?
Yes, indeed. All of the animal control officers carry microchips, scanners, and scanners are available at every single veterinary hospital around. And also things like ear tipping clues us into this cat has already been sterilized, it's already been released, and it doesn't need to be taken to the shelter necessarily. Additionally, cats bearing signs of ownership, we will do particular searches for those owners, lost reports, et cetera. And those cats may be kept for longer periods of time.
Okay, thank you. I thought that was the case, but what I don't know is whether we should reference that somehow in the code language, that you'll attempt to leave in field if there is a chip or ownership, and that you'll keep those cats longer who have evidence of that.
Yes, Council. The Return to Field program has a whole protocol around it that's really based on best standards, and it's just a little too much to cover, I think, in ordinance or in a city council meeting like this. But it's based on best practices, and we do everything we can to get cats back to owners as best we can.
But the ordinance that is proposed says that you don't have to do that. It says that you can simply collect the cat, spay or neuter it, and return it. And while I appreciate that the language might be long to refer to that, I guess I would prefer. So I'm bringing this up now so my fellow council members can think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to section 5111, dangerous and potentially dangerous dogs, or what's currently termed the vicious dog law. So going back to 2011, dog bites reported to animal control in the city of Boise have hovered right around 100 per year, despite a significant growth in population and dog numbers. Per capita dog bites are going down, not up. That being said, every year we have bites that tragically disfigure children or adults, and we see other animals and dogs severely injured and sometimes killed by dogs. The current definition of a vicious animal includes any animal which, when unprovoked in a vicious or terrorizing manner, approaches any person in apparent attitude of attack. It's a subjective definition. Moreover, the perceived behavior of dogs that falls within this definition is actually unrelated to risk of injury. Dogs that are reactive, vocalize, and even charge people are common. And they may be scary, they may be a nuisance, and they may indeed warrant a citation. But these behaviors are not at all predictive of an actual risk of biting. The only reliable predictor of a dog injuring someone is whether they have caused a bite that actually injured someone in the past. And we currently have no differentiation between relatively trivial and minor incidents and far more serious ones that are more predictive of a dangerous temperament and a lack of bite inhibition. The maximum severe penalty is prescribed for any incident: confinement for life, muzzling, chaining, and a $500,000 liability policy, which we've demonstrated is nearly impossible for almost anyone to actually obtain. So the Idaho Humane Society, a number of years ago, worked with the legislature to create a new dangerous dog statute. The new city code is largely based on this statute. It has two tiers. A dangerous dog is one that has inflicted serious injury, in which permanent restrictions and registration is required. While less control is prescribed for less serious incidents, those dogs classified as potentially dangerous, with restrictions on their keeping expiring after 2 years. The Boise version also covers dogs which, while at large, inflict serious injury or death on other domesticated animals. And we have expressed concern that this category may include normal dog behaviors, and these offending dogs would on a first incident be classified as dangerous. But we also understand the city's concern for the owners of injured or killed pets and livestock. The requirements for keeping of a dog classified as dangerous are still going to be quite difficult for many owners, especially moderate to low income families, to comply with. But we appreciate that liability coverage has been reduced to allow more families a chance to comply. Current Boise code vests the Idaho Humane Society with the power to convene vicious dog hearings and the right of owners to appeal to magistrate court for a hearing de novo. Generally, Idaho Humane Society advocates that determination hearings should not be held by the enforcement agency, but rather occur in a courtroom. What's proposed here is the continuation of administrative hearings by the enforcement agency with a right to appeal to the city clerk. This is the city staff recommendation, and it is a quite common way of handling these cases in other cities as well. Under prohibited animals 5-1-12, in addition to the concerns of Councilman Thompson, which are really well spoken regarding things like circuses, from the animal control perspective, the amendments clarify that permits and permissions does not absolve the keeper of prohibited animals from standards of care and community standards, which still fall under the purview of the city, regardless of whether someone's been permitted by Fish and Game or USDA to keep a prohibited animal. 5.13.13 provides objective criteria to noise complaints regarding animals. This is one of the most common complaints that our officers respond to. And it also provides guidance on what constitutes proof of a violation, where in the past it has been very highly subjective and variable. And then under 5-1-14, cruelty to animals. Technically, with the exception of the prohibition on long-term tethering of dogs, everything provided here is currently illegal. We successfully cite under current state law for every single one of these omissions and acts, and the penalty is roughly the same. But while state law is written broadly, this ordinance is much more specific, which may really make prosecution easier. The examples include the definition of animal hoarding, which was discussed. In 2006, Idaho Humane Society worked with a broad range of interest groups,
Jeff,
including Idaho. Yes.
Jeff, we had provided for 10 minutes, so I'm going to ask you to wrap up because we've hit that.
Okay. Yeah, the forfeiture statute is mimicked is also a part of this ordinance. And regarding 5.119, let me just say we extract animals from unsafe conditions in vehicles and cite their owner for cruelty, but we do favor this section because it's specific for the offense. And then just finally, because I am out of time, on 5.1-22, sale of commercially bred dogs and cats in retail stores. Yes, we currently do not have any retail stores selling commercially bred dogs and cats, but I can tell you anecdotally that when we did have such a store in Boise year after year, it was the single largest source of animal welfare complaints to animal control, required more investigation and inspections by animal control than any other situation I've been aware of in the past 20 years. Again, thank you, and I'm sorry I ran over time.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's go into questions now from council, both for the council member or for Jeff. All right, we might be covered. Okay, well with that, then I'm going to move us into the public hearing. First up, we have Liz Urban.
Present. Thank you. I appreciate, start video. Sorry about that. I appreciate the opportunity to provide some testimony this evening. My name is Liz Urban. I'm a resident of Boise. I hold a master's degree in wildlife conservation and management. I'm also currently serve as the president of the Golden Eagle Audubon Society. I'm also a longtime cat owner. We overall, myself and the organization, are really supportive of the changes of the code. We did have some concerns around the portions referring to feral and outdoor cats. We wanted to reiterate that we have kind of a threefold concern here, and that first, it really is around the welfare of the cats that are living outside. We feel education is key, that potentially as a community, we address outdoor cats in the future, but from the perspective of what's best for the cats and bringing them indoors to live out their productive lives in a safe way, that we expect dogs to be cared for with shelter, regular access to food, and just general safety. So part of our effort is to collaborate with organizations locally to help encourage outdoor cats in the future. But we also want to acknowledge that the outdoor cat issue can impede people's property rights of having cats, unwanted cats, enter their property because they're not being controlled. But lastly, importantly, is the impact that cats can have on wildlife in our community. So it's estimated that up to 1 billion birds in the United States are killed by cats every year. And it is not a small issue. It's one of the top contributors to bird declines. So we acknowledge that it's a challenge as a community, that cats are in our environment and what we should do about the number of them. But that for me is part of this issue, is that we are looking at ever increasing numbers of cats in our community. As more and more people come to Boise, they will bring more cats with them. The estimation is that there are now 3 times the amount of cats in the United States than there were 40 years ago. So we would love to see the opportunity to work as a community in a working group or something similar to find other methods before going codifying. Apologies.
Thank you, Liz. Next up, we have Tanya. Is it?
Madam Mayor,
Oh, yep. Go ahead, Councilman Halliburton.
I did have a question. I don't know if Liz quit because her time was up or because she got a 30-second warning. So I do have a question for her, but I also don't know if she was finished.
Apologies, I thought my screen shut off.
So I guess my question then is like, do you still have 30 seconds that you want to cover? And if not, then I can just jump right into the question.
Sure, I wouldn't mind just saying that we thought that there is an opportunity to work together and bring experts together to approach different solutions that might, in the long run, reduce the number of cats that are on the streets. Thank
Great.
you.
And Madam Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman.
my question there, I guess. So one, thank you for your service in the nonprofit sector and the Golden Eagle Audubon Society. That one's near and dear to my family. And it's, I guess my curious question is like, how do you balance the amount of birds that a cat kills and the threat to wildlife, and also you as being a cat owner, and what are the solutions that you think that are worth being explored there?
I certainly think that spaying and neutering is a wonderful piece of this puzzle, as is microchipping, helping identify if cats are owned and being able to return them to home is a wonderful piece. We think that education around the dangers of outdoor living for cats, you know, we all as cat owners want them to live as long as possible and in healthy ways, and living inside is one of the ways that we can offer that to our cat friends.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
thank you. Liz, I'd like to also ask a question, if I might. You say you'd like to put together a task force before we pass this ordinance, but it's my understanding that we're currently doing this practice. We just haven't got it in our ordinance. So it seems to me if we are interested in doing a task force, it's regardless of the ordinance or not. Am I correct?
I would hope we would have the opportunity to work together regardless. If the practice is already occurring without it being codified in the code, I guess that from our perspective, it would be preferable to not make it a permanent part of our code going forward either.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Liz. Next up, we have Tanya Yegi.
Good evening, council members. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you.
Okay, I'm super low tech. So my name's Tanya Yagi. I'm a resident of Boise. I'd first like to thank TJ Thompson for his dedication to this desperately needed effort, and my thanks to the council for welcoming dialogue. What's being considered here this evening is immensely important at the most basic level of respect for life. I'd all but given up hope that it would ever be heard, so this moment feels super intense for me, and the subject matter is visceral, so I'd ask your pardon in advance if I need to pause. I know my time is short. I've been volunteering in animal rescue and advocacy for at least half my life, and I'm a fervent supporter of the Compassionate Animal Code. It's a critical step in expanding awareness of the animal neglect, abuse, and torture that takes place in our state, as well as laying a foundation for real significant consequence to the same, and at a level that prevents, or at the very least discourages, a literally vicious cycle. The things I've witnessed in my time as an animal advocate are nightmares. There is no other word. The level of cruelty that humans can be capable of and pass on to their children is beyond disturbing. And it's happening right now in Boise and all over our state. Somewhere right now, an animal in Idaho is being abandoned, starved, abused, or tortured. And in most cases, nothing will be done. No one will ever know. What I know to be inherently true is this: animals are sentient beings who are aware of and value their own lives. They suffer and grieve and lose the will to live just as we do. They're no less than us simply because they lack the ability to convey their feelings verbally. They cannot beg for help or for protection from their abusers or for their lives. They cannot speak for themselves at all, and they are mute in their defense. Child neglect, abuse, and torture begins with this. It starts here. It will always start with animals because there is little to no risk or consequence, and the cycle repeats ad infinitum. Even though I understand the roots of animals as property within the agricultural landscape, owning an animal should not include the right to abuse it.
30-second
This
warning.
code is a crucial first step in establishing greater protections for an indisputably at-risk population that has been suffering in unimaginable ways for far, far too long. In a world and time where people decry inhumane treatment at every opportunity, we cannot profess to care about the sanctity of life when we allow such disregard for this level of suffering. TJ's right, we are 48th in the US. Only Wyoming and New Mexico are doing worse than us. We can be better. There's no rationale for allowing horror like this to continue. I urge you to support the Compassionate Animal Code and act swiftly to implement and enforce its changes. It may not be perfect, but it is a crucial first step. And thank you all so very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Tanya.
That's all I have.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, TJ.
So I can go back and forth. Would you like to testify? Anybody want to jump up and testify now that's here? Come on up. And you don't just, if you'll sign in after you give your testimony so that we have your address for the record. Oh, perfect. Are you Teresa? Excellent. We've got it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you for having this meeting. My name's Teresa Gomez. I'm from Boise. I'm homegrown here. So I just wanted to say, and it's kind of funny that my words have all been words that everybody else has said, but I'm just kind of in awe that Idaho's 48th out of 50 states in reference to this code. Everything that is proposed in this code is an improvement from what we have right now. And it would maybe improve us on the number 48. These updates have shown success around the country. Why not in Boise? We can always do better here. And I'm really here just because the animals cannot speak for themselves. and they can't be here. So I'll be here and I'll do it for them. I would just ask you guys to support this code, or at least really look into the details of it and try to make Boise a better place. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Teresa. Thanks for joining us. Sure, come on up. We'll take two and then I'll go back to the online folks.
Thank you. My name is Alex Caraselli. I live in Boise, Idaho. And 7 months ago, our dachshund, Chihuahua, was outside with my son, 7 years old. He was playing with them happily. We have some new neighbors that came into our neighborhood, and the dog got out of his control momentarily. Our dog is very friendly and polite, has run up to dogs before, gets into a submission posture, and gets along with every dog he's ever met. He loves dogs. And he's expecting no different than when he approached my neighbor's pit bull. These two new neighbors, they came in, owner of two pit bulls, a male and a female, and their pit bull happened to be on leash. And this pit bull grabbed my dog by the throat, ripped him to the ground, ripped open his neck, severely injured my dog, came back home. My son was traumatized. My daughter was traumatized. I spoke out to animal control. I said, this isn't right, this isn't normal. And they said, your dog was off leash, so it's your fault. They did nothing about it. Recently, a couple weeks ago, the very dog that attacked my dog got out of the yard of the neighbor, broke through the fence, and attacked my neighbor's dogs. They were on their own property. They were not at large. The dog attacked them, and they had to get a veterinary treatment. And everybody in the cul-de-sac, and perhaps the neighborhood, is afraid. Animal control came out. I spoke to the animal control officer. They had no record of my complaint, even though I spoke to the head of animal control. I spoke to the director of the Idaho Humane Society. I spoke to the animal control officer, and she said, what are you going to do about it? I asked her, what are you going to do about it? And she said the attack was not severe enough. She did not hear about my complaint. There's no consequence for the owners. There's no consequence for the dogs. And I'm here for people who cannot speak for themselves, those that are dead and have been mauled by pit bulls,
Sir.
those that have been
Sir,
attacked.
I'm just going to ask you to drop
Yes, I
it.
will tone it down.
Thank you.
I will tone it down.
Mhm.
But there are those that have been attacked. We can get the statistics. I talked to animal control. She sounded nothing other than a pit bull advocate. We talk about the bleeding hearts for these pit bulls. Oh, it's the breed. It's not the breed, it's the owner. It's not true. Pediatricians have talked about the only comparable bite to a pit bull bite is that of a shark. If you look at the statistics, a vast percentage, the greatest percentage, even though pit bulls make up about 5% of all dogs, they constitute 60% of human deaths. They are a vicious breed, and they have infiltrated the pound, and they've infiltrated Boise, and I want them out. There's a reason why Colorado has banned them. I want them out of our city. I want them out of their town. I have a bleeding heart for people. People who cannot speak for themselves, people that have been killed. I have a bleeding heart
Sir.
for those that love their own pets. I want them, I will finish it up.
Yeah,
Mayor McLean.
you need to. You're
I
over
will.
time.
I want it to be loud and clear. If we don't deal with this problem, if the pit bull attacks and kills a person, or the pit bull kills and attacks another dog,
Sir, you need to
because
wrap
we
up
have a
right now.
compromised animal control, the blood is on the hands of those that won't take action.
Right, I'm going to ask everyone else to please be respectful, not of the work that's been done by this council, of the time that you can see if you're in the room, and we will help you if you're on the phone, that you have as we move forward. Next up, we have Susie Rhines.
Madam Mayor.
And sir, you need to put your name and address on the form. All right. I'd ask you to do it right now, actually, so we've got it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
before we move on to the next person, I just want to thank you for coming out tonight. And I am so sorry that happened to your pet. and to your family.
Madam Mayor, the next three people that are signed up, I don't see them online.
Okay. So are you Lee or Teresa? Nope. Okay. We have Susie Rhines, Lee Walls, and Teresa Massey who've signed up in advance, but we don't see them right now. If you're with us online with a different name or a different phone number, you can raise your hand and we'll be sure to call you. And while that's happening, let's go ahead to Victoria Runo.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. I am the Vice President of the Idaho Capital City Kennel Club and am here representing our membership. And I do not have video access, so I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize for that. You don't need to watch me anyway, I guess.
Don't worry about it. We can hear you just fine. So go ahead.
Thank you. So I represent the Idaho Capital City Kennel Club, as I said, as Vice President and membership. And we really would like to commend our City Council and Mayor McLean for their work to strengthen the Boise's Animal Code to increase protection for companion animals within the city. We all know how much our companion animals add to our lives. And so we really appreciate providing that these animals have greater protection from those who might seek to harm them through cruelty and or neglect. And it demonstrates the value that this community places on these animals. The club does have a couple just concerns about potential unintended consequences of some changes in the code. The club did send in a letter to the City Council, and folks can read that if they would like to do the whole thing. Non-commercial kennel licensing has come up as a concern for us, as it did apparently with a lot of other people. And Councilman Thompson, I also read all of the comments as well, so saw what you did. We would just like to have that considered again as potentially maybe some rewriting that, even if it's been around for a long time, perhaps it needs to be revisited a little bit. There are a few concerns about animal endangerment in vehicles. We certainly do support the ability to rescue an animal that is in distress and is needing to get out of a vehicle. The concerns are, though, dogs, when faced with a situation like that, will often bolt. And if an animal does bolt after being released and run into traffic, causing an accident that could lead to the injury or death of the animal, vehicular damage, or human injury, who'd be responsible if that unfortunate scenario would occur? Another potential consideration is that the well-meaning stranger could be bitten by a dog frightened by the act of that said stranger breaking into a vehicle. Frightened and injured animals sometimes do bite. Would this dog suddenly fall in the category of being dangerous or potentially dangerous? And would the owner of that dog that bit the well-meaning stranger who was trying to help the dog be held responsible for the actions of that dog? And the last one is just talking about the transfer of animals upon public property. We completely understand and support that this section seeks to prevent the sale of puppies and kittens out of boxes on street corners and parking lots. But some responsible breeders do meet with new owners of pets at the Boise airport. They have to transfer ownership paperwork and a lot of paperwork that's required by airlines. So how would this section impact those folks and their ability to legally transfer custody of a pet that someone has purchased? Again, the members of the Idaho Capital City Kennel Club understand it's impossible to cover every single situation. We do think it's important to think about unintended consequences, and we do very much appreciate all the hard work and effort that went into this update and appreciate the opportunity to testify. So thank you very much.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Victoria. Yes, go ahead.
Victoria, I just wanted to say that's a fantastic point about breeders in the airport and transferring an animal. That's literally the definition of the paperwork that's happened, that takes place at the airport. It is transfer paperwork. It's responsible, good animal ownership. And I wanted to thank you for that input, and I'll be following up on it with Councilman Thompson.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Next up, we have Jenna Jensen.
Whoa, hold on, sorry.
Okay, we can see you and hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, good evening, council. My name is Jenna. I work on the Stop Puppy Mills campaign at the Humane Society of the United States. I work alongside Lisa Kaufman, who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. So what I specifically work on are local ordinances across the country that prohibit the sale of commercially bred dogs and cats in pet stores. And so I urge Boise to join the more than 380 localities across more than 27 states in prohibiting the sale of commercially bred dogs and cats in pet stores. We receive a constant stream of complaints from consumers all across the country who have spent thousands of dollars in veterinary bills caring for their sick pet store puppy. Pet store puppies are likely to be sick because they're born into deplorable conditions. They're taken from their mothers very early on. They're placed on semi-trucks in confined cages with other vulnerable and sick puppies and are shipped to faraway pet stores where they are treated as nothing more than products. Passing a prohibition on the sale of commercially bred dogs and cats in pet stores will prevent the many problems puppy selling pet stores pose and encourage other localities in the state to take similar action, which will help the state chip away at this problem. And so with that, I'm really here to answer any questions that you all have. I know Lisa will cover this in more detail as well. So thank you all for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jenna. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Christina Scaringe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening. Christina Scaringe. I'm General Counsel for Animal Defenders International, speaking for our Idaho supporters in favor of Boise action to ban certain traveling wild animal acts. With our thanks to the council and to sponsor Council Member Thompson for his lead. ADI has worked on this issue for years around the world. We provided you extensive data supporting this action, and we welcome your questions. Most Americans now oppose traveling wild animal acts. 49 diverse nations, including many with ranching or agrocentric economies, have already banned such acts, as well as at least 3 US states and more than 100 local US jurisdictions, including Blaine and Ketchum, which have already been mentioned. A bipartisan federal bill and at least 10 state bills are in the works. Prevailing science makes clear these animals are inherently unsuited for this business model. One comprehensive study that we sent you considered the latest science in the industry worldwide, concluding that for circus animals, this is, quote, no life worth living, that any education or conservation role is marginal at best and outweighed by the negative impression generated by using wild animals for entertainment, raising concerns that little is known about how or how many animals are sourced, bred, traded, how they die, or what happens once they're no longer used. Using animals this way teaches us nothing about what it means to be wild. Rather, the science shows these acts perpetuate misconceptions that fuel trade and trafficking, which harm wild populations. Federal oversight is complex and costly, and by the agency's own admission, it's just not working. In fact, USDA oversight has plummeted in recent years. States often rely upon the mere existence of federal licensure despite long-standing OIG criticisms of failed oversight. The National Association of Public Health Veterinarians warns that no federal laws address pathogen transmission risk at these venues. Federal oversight does not consider public safety. That's left to you and your first responders, who may lack the funding, familiarity, or facilities to deal with these species. Banning these acts won't end the circus. The show can go on without exposing your citizens to chronically stressed and abused animals. Please protect the animals and Boise families for your work on this bill.
Thank you. Any questions? All right.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
we do have Teresa Massey online now.
Oh, great. Teresa, welcome. We'll call you on up. Is she there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. My concerns are with the feral cat situation. I am a property manager here in New Plymouth. I manage a senior community here, and There's a park across the street. We tend to have people dump animals at the park and they end up on our property. And at this point in time, I am trying to help take care of 12, maybe 12 to 14 feral cats. It's caused some concern with elderly neighbors that can't clean the urine from the outside of the buildings. The cat fights keep people awake. I'm very much an animal advocate, so I've gathered 4 kittens that I had found and taken them in and had them spayed and neutered, and their ears have been clipped and they've been returned. But here in New Plymouth, we find that there is no really close shelter or humane society. And I've been working with a couple of agencies, the Ontario Feral Cat Project and the Treasure Valley Feral Cat Angel Project, but it's such a drive. So I'm just asking for any help, any advice, someone to work in concert with me. My supervisor is in Emmett and she's due to be to my property this Monday. We have one resident that's called the sheriff. He's threatened to poison cats. I found one already this week dead on our property. So it's getting very urgent here. And I'm just one small property in many. I know this goes on all over the state. And in my opinion, the cats keep down the vermin. We don't have mice. We don't have a lot of insects. We don't have a lot of other cats, that just the ones that are in this specific colony. Others have tried to come and these cats will chase them away. So there's other cats waiting to come in, but any help, anyone that could reach out and help, it would be greatly appreciated. And I'm very much for any ordinances or laws, anything that could be passed to help us do better with the feral cat
Great, thank you, Teresa.
population.
Thanks, Teresa. I'm
So-
going to ask if you would, if you'll
You're welcome.
provide your contact information to the clerk. And
Sure.
Because this is something that's better discussed offline, and then I'll leave it to either TJ or Jeff to connect with you.
Sure, that's great.
Thanks. All right, now we'll just check in. Susie or Lee by chance? Okay. Would either of you left like to jump in here? Nope. Okay. So we will move on with the list. Allison Parker.
Hi.
Hi, Allison.
Hi. Okay, I'm testifying in support of the proposed amendments to the Boise City Code governing the care and keeping of domestic animals, and would like to first thank Councilman Thompson for his incredible work and the council for considering these amendments. The proposed amendments were carefully developed with input from many Boise stakeholders and are necessary to make Boise a more humane community. I want to specifically voice my support for the ordinance preventing the sale of animals in public right-of-ways and commercially bred dogs and cats in retail stores, as these animals are in many cases sourced from disreputable and cruel puppy or kitten mill operations. Currently, Boise has no stores that sell such animals, but we have in the past. This ordinance would prevent any store from engaging in this practice in the future. These types of ordinances have been enacted by over 300 municipalities across the country. As the Animal Legal Defense Fund explains, puppy mill operators maximize their profits by producing large numbers of puppies as quickly as possible. As a result, unsanitary conditions, disease, and neglect are rampant. It is common for dogs from puppy mills to suffer from genetic conditions as well as deadly diseases, including distemper, respiratory infections, mange, and various parasitic disorders. Dogs from puppy mills also frequently exhibit behavioral and psychological problems due to the lack of early socialization and being weaned too young. I personally adopted a corgi who had been a stud dog in a puppy mill. His living situation had truly been torture and his condition was devastating. His road to recovery was long, and though he is now much healthier than when he was rescued, he still bears the physical and emotional scars from his ordeal. The animals sold in these retail stores clearly suffer as a result of their lot in life, but so does the consumer. For example, consumers who purchase puppies or kittens originating from puppy mill type operations have been provided inaccurate breeder license numbers and addresses, fabricated breeding certificates, and inaccurate veterinary records. Consumers only realize that there is a problem after their puppy or kitten has become seriously ill or even dies. These families often rack up veterinary bills in an attempt to save their new family member. This type of fraud is so prevalent that 22 states have puppy lemon laws. Boise will be a safer place for its animals, its consumers, and its reputable breeders with the ordinance preventing the sale of commercially bred dogs and cats in retail stores. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. All right, next up we have Michelle Glaze. Hi, Michelle, we can see you. You were muted. It looks like you're muted, Michelle. Can you hear me? There's a delay. Oh, now you're unmuted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't have anything rehearsed. I just know that I appreciate Councilman Thompson and everyone that's worked on this with him. I feel that there's such a need to help all animals. I have my full-time job, but it seems that the volunteering for animals has pretty much become another full-time thing for me. I'm pretty much that person that will go out and save anything that's in danger. And I now, because of that reputation, am getting, I don't know, maybe more calls than animal control. I mean, it's something that I do on my own. Even driving past homes, there's people that will go out and send me pictures of animals that are chained up to porches with 2 feet to move around. Owners that will not allow their dogs to have homes. Multiple calls to animal control where a dog is just laying under a piece of wet plywood, and that's a suitable home for the animal, that's suitable shelter because it's covered up. I've had calls of people that, they have animals they're not taking care of. I've gone on people's property with their permission and talked to them to try and maybe educate and find first, ways to help families with their pets and make things better. With food donations, that type of thing. Recently, through just my neighborhood alone, raising funds to build a kennel that had been on a chain for about 9 years of its life. And someone happened to drive by, in the freezing cold, and this dog is just curled up on a chain. And animal control has been out to the house more than once and nothing's been done. So I definitely support the compassion code that Councilman Thompson's worked on. I feel like there is such a need that even, that needs to be spread just beyond the city of Boise. And I just really want to thank him for working on this and for everyone, listening and just taking this very seriously. I feel that it's sad that to me, these are common sense. These are common sense items. All animals should be treated fairly with respect, given food. It's sad that we have to, put into words how that an animal should have food, shelter. These are just common sense things to me, and you would be amazed at the things that I have seen. Driving past homes with a dog on a chain and a turkey carcass thrown in the mud for the dog to eat. This is all over. I had 2 calls just this week, one a Meridian for a dog chained to the front porch, another husky that's been chained with maybe 3 feet to move around. And animal control has been to these places, but nothing's done.
Michelle?
Yes.
I let you run over a little bit to finish, to wrap up your thoughts. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks a lot. All right, next up we have Lisa Kaufman. Lisa, okay, now you're unmuted. We still can't see you, but I wasn't sure if we could. There you go. Nope, you muted yourself. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties today. Mayor McLean and Boise City Council members, my name is Lisa Kaufman and I reside in the city of Boise. I'm the former Idaho State Director for the Humane Society of the United States, and I transitioned over to a policy manager for legislative campaigns this last fall. I want to thank Council Member Thompson and all of you for taking time to work through the changes on this ordinance the last few years. A lot of thought went into restructuring the code to bring it up to date and to add additional sections to make the city safer for both our residents and for our four-legged companions. I know you will be hearing from passionate animal advocates this evening, but I want to take time to talk about another reason this ordinance should also be supported. As we all know, Boise is a very, very desirable place to live, and it's one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. While it brings new businesses, revenue, opportunities, and new friends, it also brings more animals to the city as well. Our current ordinances are outdated and do not reflect the value that animals play in our daily lives, and they need to be updated to keep both our residents and our animals safe. When I moved here in 1998 from Southern California, yes, I'm no transplant, I came for the same reasons that others are moving here now. I was leaving an area with a lot of traffic, pollution, and crime. But what I didn't realize when I moved here was how great the animal protection laws were in California and how weak they were in Idaho. I hear from people all the time on Nextdoor or other social media platforms when a case with an animal comes up and the public sees and hears about it. For several years, we tried to change things on the state level, but that was really a difficult road to navigate because this is considered an agricultural state and our animal laws reflected that. However, Boise is a very urban city and it's growing. It's the perfect time to update the ordinances to align with our residents in choosing Boise as their home and who also consider the family part or pets part of the family. The Humane Society of the United States supports all of the changes in this ordinance, and I hope you will as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lisa. And next, Debbie Phillips.
There you go. Okay, hi. Can you hear me okay now? Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I've been crying listening to some of your testimonies, and so I'm a little bit emotional right now. I appreciate so much the work that TJ has done and has put into this ordinance. I highly support it. I currently have 4 rescue dogs. My life would be so empty without them. I totally, excuse me, support everything that has been said tonight. I currently am on the board of directors at the Idaho Humane Society. Again, I forgive my throat. I just, like I say, I've been crying, but I'll let you go so somebody else with a better voice can speak. But thank you so much, TJ, for all your work. Thank you, Dr. Rosenthal, for your support in this. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Debbie. I hope your throat's okay.
It's fine.
All right, Laura Jensky.
Mayor McLean and members of the Boise City Council, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the proposed amendments. My name is Laura Jensky. I am a resident of Boise, a pet owner, retired scientist, and a member of the Idaho Humane Society Board of Directors. First, I wish to express my general support for the code amendments. I firmly believe that humane treatment of animals defines our community as one of the best and most welcoming. Second, I strongly endorse the Idaho Humane Society's Return to Field program and am gratified to see it codified in the amendments. Many cats picked up as strays are pets whose owners are unaware their cats are missing. Nationally, the return to owner rate for cats in shelters is abysmal, about 3%. Underserved and marginalized communities in particular are unlikely to recover their pets from shelters. If the shelter is overcrowded, healthy pet cats may be euthanized, a truly heartbreaking result for families. It can be avoided by the return to field practice. I realize there are critics who say returning cats to the field is abandonment, that homeless cats are left to suffer. This criticism fails to recognize that these cats are not homeless, but rather are pets who roam territories established in their owners' neighborhoods. Cats who are sick, neglected, or abused are not returned, but when possible, rehabilitated for adoption to new loving homes. Nor are cats returned to areas that are dangerous or inhospitable. The point I wish to emphasize is that these return to field practices prevent the unnecessary euthanasia of pet cats while aiding those cats who truly are feral. Others may have concerns about feral cat populations in general, but these cats do serve a pest control function. The Idaho Humane Society's trap, spay, neuter, release program for feral cats provides several benefits. Sterilization prevents breeding and thus overpopulation, while concurrently reducing nuisance behaviors such as yowling and fighting. Vaccination reduces diseases within the feral cat population and thus spread to pet cats. There are other worthy amendments in the code. I'm pleased to see an effort to prevent the sale of puppy and kitty mill animals in commercial settings. I will conclude by mentioning that there are some statements in the code that give me pause, but overall, I appreciate the goals of the amendment and the hard work of the council in tackling these issues for our great city. Thank you for your time.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Lisa. Excuse me, council member.
Laura, I just want to thank you so much for addressing the reality of what it is to be a cat owner. And there are some folks who don't have the means, but they like having a cat. And I really appreciate you addressing the equity issue there and just shedding some light on, to not let perfect be the enemy of the good. So thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Laura. And I wanted to say something here because you were the first to make a really valid and excellent point that I was going to eventually bring up. And that's the fact that the return to field program, by returning these cats spayed and neutered, it does change their behavior. And while they certainly venture onto private property, the nuisance behaviors gets cut dramatically down. And when they are no longer pursuing other options as a cat on the prowl, they certainly change those behaviors and it makes them a much better neighbor, so to speak. So appreciate you bringing that up. And since you mentioned it, I thought I'd just go ahead and focus on it now. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Stacy Novak.
Madam Mayor, I don't see Stacy online.
Okay. Quinn Tremaine. Hi there. Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor McLean and the council members. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. I will make this brief for you. My name is Quinn Tremaine and I live in Boise and I have my whole life. I am the Vice President of Accounting and Finance for an Idaho-based retail company, and I also proudly serve on the Board of Directors for the Idaho Humane Society. I am here today to express my full support of the proposed changes, the proposed updates to the Animal Code for the reasons outlined by both Councilman Thompson and Dr. Rosenthal. I can't thank Councilman Thompson enough for your efforts over these past few years and the collaboration with the Idaho Humane Society on these very important changes. Thank you, Mayor McLean and the council for listening to my testimony.
Thank you, Quinn, for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Nadia Novik. Hi there, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Mayor McLean and members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Nadia Novik and I'm a resident of Boise. I'm speaking on behalf of the Idaho Shelter Coalition as president of that group. The Idaho Shelter Coalition is a fairly young group, but we already have 25 animal welfare organizations throughout the state as members, and membership is growing. The coalition's mission is to eliminate the unwanted euthanasia of healthy animals coming through the shelter system. Our goal is that by 2025, no healthy adoptable animal is euthanized in any Idaho shelter. In order to accomplish our goal, we have consulted with professionals throughout the country to find the best path for success. National consensus is that the best way to save animals is to keep them out of the shelter system when possible. This can be achieved through licensing requirements and regulations around dogs wearing a collar and tag when outside of its home. Both of these are mentioned within this ordinance and strongly supported by the coalition. In addition, Section 5-1-13 of the ordinance speaks to life-saving measures for animals within our state. The Return to Field program, referenced by Dr. Rosenthal earlier, addresses how free-roaming cats are handled within the city of Boise. You may remember that 10 to 15 years ago, spaying and neutering animals prior to them leaving the shelter was not the norm. Whereas today, you would be hard-pressed to find an organization that does not require the pets they adopt out to be altered. Spaying and neutering has become the expectation, and soon too will be the idea of returning free-roaming cats to where they were found. National groups such as NACA, Best Friends Animal Society, Alley Cat Allies, and shelter medicine teams from the University of Wisconsin, Florida, and Cornell all agree that controlling the population of free-roaming cats in the best possible manner involves returning them to where they were found when possible after spay-neuter surgery. Organizations across the country have adopted this method and are seeing great success. Within the coalition, organizations that have adopted a return to field program have seen, on average, an over 50% reduction in euthanasia rates. I can say that without a doubt, these organizations would not go back to a method of taking in stray cats and having them stay in the shelter. Where spaying and neutering animals prior to the animal leaving the shelter was a huge catalyst in helping reduce euthanasia rates, return to field programs are proving to be just as instrumental. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak on behalf of the coalition.
Thank you, Nadia. Have a great night. And then Ashley Dale.
Hello, Mayor McLean and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. My name is Ashley Dale and I'm the Director of Operations with Bailing Out Benji. Bailing Out Benji is a nonprofit organization that researches puppy mills and their connection to pet stores. I think this entire update to the Boise Animal Code is very important and could be used as a model animal code for other cities, but I'm here to speak specifically on the ordinance portion of this code, which would prohibit the retail sale of cats and dogs in pet stores. Boise currently does not have a puppy selling store within city limits, but without a humane ordinance in place, there is nothing stopping a store from setting up shop in your city. To give you an idea about what is currently possible in Boise, just 10 miles away in Meridian, Idaho, there's a puppy selling store that has been the center of controversy due to their predatory lending practices and being confirmed as sourcing from inhumane puppy mills. This location in Meridian was connected to at least a dozen parvo outbreaks from October 2019 to January 2020. Since new ownership in February 2020, the store has imported over 860 puppies from large out-of-state puppy mills, many with hundreds of adult breeding dogs and animal welfare violations. Customers of this new store have reached out to our organization reporting that their puppy was sold with worms and giardia, which resulted in hundreds of dollars in vet bills. One consumer purchased a puppy that was later seen by a vet and suspected to have hypoplasia, a hereditary and congenital disease where the portion of the brain that controls balance, coordination, and movement is not fully developed. Another customer was sold a puppy advertised as a purebred dog when in fact it was not. When legal action was pursued by that customer, the court recognized that the pet store's contract was misleading and key provisions were hidden within other unrelated sections of the document and issued a judgment against the store owners. These situations unfortunately happen all too often with puppy selling stores across the country. Not only do puppy selling stores fund the cruel puppy mill industry and keep consumers in the dark about where their puppy came from, they push high interest pet loans and leases on consumers. Pet store puppies cost anywhere from $1,200 to $8,000 with 90 days same as cash financing and pet loans and leases that have interest rates that can reach as high as 200%. Consumer paperwork was received from the store in Meridian, shows an interest rate of 35.8%, increasing the cost of the puppy by $2,600. This is a predatory practice and puts families at risk of not being able to financially care for their new puppy and at risk of having their puppy repossessed if they cannot meet their payment obligations. Without a humane ordinance, your constituents are at risk of purchasing a potentially sick puppy or getting locked into a high-interest pet loan or lease. Boise can become the first city in Idaho to go humane and actively show your city that you will not support or fund this cruel industry. Passing an ordinance now ensures that a puppy selling store cannot open up in Boise. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about these puppy imports into Idaho. Thank you for your time and consideration of this necessary animal code update.
Thank you, Ashley. So Ashley's the last person that signed up in advance. So now's, nope, you're not planning on testifying at all. Okay, great. How about you, sir, in the back? Nope, didn't plan to testify at all. All right. Thank you both for being here. And anybody else that has raised their hand?
Madam Mayor, we do have Janie Schaefer.
Okay, great. And that's it?
As of right now, yes.
All right, Janie Schaefer. Hi there, we can see you.
Hi there. My name is Janie Schaefer, and I am not from the city of Boise. I am actually from the city of Lewiston. I am one of the animal control officers for the Lewiston Police Department, 6 hours north of you. And I can tell you that we are watching very, very closely on what happens tonight. I'm praying that you pass this code. Boise leads the way with the rest of the state. If we can get Boise to start passing animal-related codes that are more humane and are more with the times, and so we aren't the 48th state regarding animal cruelty, it's going to help get our state representatives to notice, and hopefully we can get state laws updated as well. I'm also a part of our Nez Perce County's Animal Cruelty Unit Board, and we've been looking for ways to update our code, and by some miracle, I found TJ's updated code on your website about 2 weeks ago, and I've been able to speak with him on the phone and through email, and I cannot thank him enough for all the help that he's given. So I've been able to take the proposed code that you have and edit it down because we are a significantly more rural area than the city of Boise. But we're waiting on bated breath basically for what you guys choose to do, because I will be presenting in front of our city council as soon as you guys have a decision, and we can follow after you, and hopefully we can make Idaho better than what it is. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak, even though I am not one of your citizens.
Well, thanks, Janie, for calling in. Have a great night. With that, anybody else?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Are there further questions from the, we give people a chance only once to talk. I'm gonna, I'm going to need you to come up here. And sir, we're going to cut the mic if it goes beyond the question, because typically we don't allow questions from the public once they've had their opportunity to speak.
Sure. In reading the code, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I misread it.
Your question. I need you to
Sure.
get to the question.
So in the case of an animal that attacks a human unprovoked and kills the human, what in the new code versus the old code, what is the consequence for the dog?
All right, before that is answered, I'm going to ask you to take your seat, and if the councilman chooses to address that in his final comments, he's able to do that.
Madam Mayor.
But until then, and I want to make sure you signed in, right? We've got your name for the record. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, until then, do council members have questions for Councilmember Thompson?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So question for Councilmember Thompson and Jeff, and just I guess a real quick thanks, because I think I'll forget it later. But thank you for having the conversation with someone from Lewiston. It's always nice to make sure that we're spreading the love and doing what we can to create impact elsewhere. My question kind of stems back to, maybe it was one of our first testimonies, and it was just some of the stuff that we're hearing from conservation-based organizations, specifically around wildlife and birds. I'm curious what conversations have taken place either with you, Councilmember Thompson, and these organizations as far as getting guidance, or Jeff, with you and the Humane Society as far as other types of alternatives that are out there when it comes to addressing issues of killing wildlife. And I'm pleading ignorance a little bit because I don't know the answer. So I'm curious if there's been more conversations around those issues specifically and any potential solutions that might be available.
Madam Mayor, if I could start, and then I'd like to have Jeff jump in. First of all, Councilmember Halliburton, I appreciate that in terms of the Lewiston. I think it's extremely important that when we pass code that at the city level, that we certainly need to see start a fire across the state, because it's not happening at that level. It's important that information gets out. So I'll continue to work with other cities. I'm going to defer I know that Jeff has spoken with the Audubon Society in years past, and may be able to speak more specifically to the birds. And that I also, if Jeff, you want to take a shot at the question that was asked by a citizen, feel free, or your choice.
Jeff, you can go ahead.
Sure. Councilman Halliburton. So the Idaho Humane Society is not just a cat-centered or dog-centered organization. In fact, we have very close ties going back decades with Animals in Distress Association, which is the major rehab facility for birds in our community. And many of our veterinarians actually work on wildlife issues as well. So we're concerned about wildlife conservation just like any other animal welfare organization. In fact, at one point, we actually purchased the Ruth Malachar Bird Center and maintained its operation so that Animals in Distress could continue to its important work. The reality is, unfortunately, and nobody really likes this fact, but the population dynamics of cats in our community are such. Shelters like ours, we handle about 3,000 stray cats a year. There's an estimated 23,000 or more free roaming cats, most likely in this community. Even if we destroyed every single one of those cats, wildlife advocates, as you know, folks that study these issues, folks that study the population dynamics of cats, know that about 75% of cats in a breeding colony have to be removed in any given season to really impact the overall population of the cats. That's really depressing, obviously. We advocate strongly for all cats to be kept indoors. But the reality is that, you know, cats have been in this community for a long time. They may be described as an invasive species by some, but they're not murder hornets that just flew out of a shipping container a year ago. These animals came over on the Oregon Trail originally in covered wagons. They've been roaming this community for a long time. We wish there was a truly definitive way to eliminate humanely the population of cats in the community. But the reality is that these cats are a part of our ecosystem, whether we like it or not. And their populations are regulated by climate, by disease, by food sources. There are things that can be done. And in fact, you're probably unaware of something that the city of Boise did that probably dramatically impacted the population of feral cats roaming in this community. And that was the switch to standardized garbage containers from the situation we had before, where every alleyway was full of overflowing garbage containers. That probably did more than anything else. But, you know, we humans have to sort of realize our limitations. And I think we can take some lessons from the federal government's war on certain types of wildlife, like coyotes, which they've spent literally millions of dollars trying to eradicate. There's some things that are within our control, and then there's others that can't. Education is, of course, a huge component, and we do everything we can. Unfortunately, animal welfare organizations have preached keeping cats indoors for about 100 years, and yet we still have something like 40% of pet owners with cats allowing them outdoors. We've really done everything we can. This trap, neuter, return program, or rather shelter, neuter, return program, is about not killing just for the sake of killing, realizing that it's not doing anything. But what it is doing, frankly, is killing a lot of cats that belong to people. In terms of Mr. Caroselli's comments about his unfortunate situation, and I've worked with Mr. Caroselli, and I would sort of question his exact description of events.
I'm going to ask you not to do that, but if you choose
Okay.
to answer the question, otherwise we'll move on.
Yeah, you know, if we had in 2006, we had a toddler killed in the city of Boise. And unfortunately, there's nothing in any dangerous dog law that would have prevented that tragic occurrence, which was mainly due to a real lapse in judgment. But we also have a state dangerous dog code, and that one is solely focused on attacks on human beings, and it occurs in a courtroom. And judges make the determinations in that case. And judges have the power to order a dog destroyed in the case of any of these severe injuries.
Madam Mayor, I did have a follow-up question.
Sure, thank you. Go ahead.
Jeff, thank you, for the first part there. That was helpful, and it did provide some clarity. There was, I guess, a specific part of my question, and that was just if there are conversations or ongoing conversations or opportunity for conversation between the Humane Society and some of our conservation-based organizations who maybe reached out with some concerns about these issues. And so I was wondering if you could just touch on whether those conversations have been had, if they exist, if they're planned, and kind of that frame.
Yeah, we have had conversations with, for instance, the Golden Eagle Audubon Society, and in previous years in particular, I recall about keeping cats in outdoor catios and other alternatives to allowing cats to roam free. We also discussed the issue of particularly sensitive areas like riparian zones and other wildlife areas where, for example, the return to field program might be modified. And those conversations are, they're always a part of the conversation. We certainly don't want to do harm, and it is not an indiscriminate program. We have, we evaluate areas in terms of whether cats should be returned. We look at every cat as an individual circumstance, and we look at situations. And if there is a place where this method is going to be problematic, we don't do it in those areas. So I think we're very responsive to those concerns.
And Madam Mayor, one follow-up.
One more.
Jeff, could you just give me a couple examples of some of those areas that you're referring to that wouldn't be appropriate?
Well, for example, the Fish and Game's wildlife center on the Boise River. That would be a prime example of a place where I would avoid. We have situations where we have had excessive congregations of cats, welfare concerns, sanitation concerns. And if we have a neighborhood in which individuals have expressed or having a real problem with having a community cat, we basically put a red X on that area. So those are some of the things that we consider.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Further questions? All right, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I couldn't get unmuted.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a quick question about process. I think in addition to the changes that TJ talked about tonight, there's a couple of items that have come up tonight that might be considered for discussion. So my question is, are we going to give general direction tonight and direct the ordinance as written to the reading calendar with the option of being able to modify it slightly with some of these things that have come up, or are we going to wait a week and work on some of those and move it to the reading calendar?
Councilman, do you have a preference?
Thank you for that, Elaine. Councilmember Clegg, I think, I mean, certainly ideally we move it forward tonight. I think I've been keeping track of the vast majority of the comments and what I wanted to address. There's a handful that I would try to speak to here, but I think the only real potential change that I heard coming out of it was one that you had suggested with the attempt to leave infield if microchipped, that sort of thing, and will be held onto longer if the cat has signs of ownership. That's maybe a sentence around that. I think Jen Patino, with her valuable skill set, would be able to come up with some sort of sentence for us, I think, to put in there, I think, in the days ahead. But I'm not sure we would need to meet again if we all agree that that's like an insert that we're prepared to accept.
Sure,
so if I could follow.
Council President, I think we've got.
What's that?
I think, no, that's okay. I think we've got a lag. Go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you, Councilmember Thompson. The only other thing I heard was around the transfer of paperwork at the airport. And it seems likely or possible that we could add number 5 to 5-123 to address that. And again, I think you're right. I would trust Jen to come up with some language that would make that happen.
So with that in mind, I'm going to propose we close the public hearing.
Okay.
And great. And then, so next steps, I would suggest there, a motion on the floor on the table is appropriate. But based on what I heard, Council President, I think the best day is as we followed in the past with some ordinances is, deliberate as you will right now. Then the councilmen with legal and probably with your leadership, just connect while the readings are happening, make sure that the things that are covered. And then by the third reading, it should be in its final form.
Madam Mayor. So deliberation and motion. I would like to just first address strictly to the airport. My opinion on that, Councilmember Clegg, is I don't think that we need to address it. And this is the reason why, because we specifically protect responsible breeders within this code. And that's what this individual would fall under. So if someone's working with a responsible breeder, the transportation of that animal is quite irrelevant to the process. It's already happened in regard whether they're pulling up at the door to collect it or they're pulling up to the airport. It's still a protected group, which is responsible breeders. So I don't think we need to specifically address some sort of strange list of places like airports where it's okay, because I think it's already there. That's my opinion. But I do just want to make a few quick remarks briefly. I appreciate the 17 folks that spoke tonight and the hundreds that took the survey and the immense amounts of support that we've seen, the 90% level in Boise. I think that it's a safe position to move forward with codification of the return to field program that's already been in place since 2017, but we can continue to monitor that situation. And as Dr. Rosenthal has noted, always looking to ensure additional improvements if they can be found, and working with groups like Audubon Society to continue that education campaign that's gone on for centuries to encourage people to keep their cat inside if they're able. I wanted to recognize, my heart goes out to Alex for what happened with your pet. It's a horrible thing, and I certainly think that with the work that Jeff in particular has put into this ordinance with the vicious or potentially vicious animal, splitting that up and putting more specificity around it, it's going to help immensely going forward in a situation like that. In terms of the Kennel Club, I really appreciated their remarks, and specifically though around the hot cars and breaking a window and the potential for that animal to cause damage to an individual that did it. This is a practice that's been going on for a very long time in 30 states, very successfully. Right now, officers with the law can already do it, break open a vehicle. We haven't had instances of that, so I think it's safe to say that it's a well-studied program and prepared to move forward at the city of Boise level. Address the airport, and then I really thank Michelle Glaze, who does all that work rescuing animals, and many of her comments were surrounding seeing animals on short chains and left for hours. That's why it's so important. I believe we add the tethering section. Those are all my comments. I really appreciated all the testimony. I'm prepared to make a motion, and I would move that we move forward with the Compassionate Animal Code. I guess I could use the actual. I would propose that we move forward with the animal code. I don't think it has an ordinance number, and with all of the proposed edits that were in the slideshow, with the exception of item number 5. So items 1 through 4, and then 6 through 9, which includes number 9, which was the new one that wasn't in the prior memo, as well as there's 5 very minor grammatical things that I'll simply send to whoever I need to send that to, if clerk's office or whatever, and then direct legal staff just legal staff and I will work together to get that line figured out, line or two, to speak to what your concern was, Councilmember Clegg, and put you in that process and let you ensure you see that so that you're comfortable with that language in the next couple of days, but to move this forward to the first reading next week.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
First, item 5 on the list that Councilman Thompson excluded was my suggestion, and after some private consultations with him and then also some of the testimony tonight, I see that I was wrong and he was right, and it should not be included, so I'm glad he omitted it from his motion. The second issue, I think we all agree that transfers at the airport should be excluded. I'm not sure that I read the code quite the same way that Councilman Thompson does. I'm not sure that those breeders do enjoy that benefit, but I think we all intend them to. And I think with this motion, whatever language adjustments we need to do to capture that, I think we're all on the same page. So I'll be looking forward to voting for this in a moment.
Madam Mayor.
Just one note, I'm happy to work with Jen if there's additional support for that with Councilmember Clegg to ensure airports is included. And I also wanted to correct something, not next week's reading, but to give Jen a sufficient amount of time in 2 weeks. We put it on the first reading.
Councilmember Whittings.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank everyone who came out to share their thoughts on the Compassionate Animal Ordinance. I know that people have a lot of strong feelings about our pets,
because they're parts of our family, they're parts of our lives, and we care a great deal about animals because, like one of the folks tonight who offered testimony said, they can't speak for themselves. So I just want to thank everyone for sharing emotional stories and sharing something that they really care about with us, and coming out in support of this. I know that Councilmember Thompson has worked a long time and a great deal with our legal staff and with Amanda Brown, who makes all of this stuff happen, with council leadership. And this has been a long time coming. So I just want to commend him for sticking with it, and commend staff for sticking with it too. And I'm looking forward to all of the proposed changes and making this an ordinance that protects our pets and protects our pet owners for years to come. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I'm excited to support Councilmember Thompson's motion tonight. I'm excited that so many people signed up to testify and that there was so much public input on this one. Like Councilmember Wooding said, we absolutely love our animals. I've got my dog Ned laying right next to me, and every once in a while he tries to get some attention and usually makes my council meeting just a little bit more fun when he does. I know how much work Councilmember Thompson has put into this, how much he cares about this issue. One of the things I really appreciate is that when you're really passionate about something, sometimes it's really difficult to take input. And I've been impressed with Councilmember Thompson's willingness and ability to take input and to explore this deeply and thoroughly. I think he's been working on it hard for a really long time, and I think that we've got a good result. Like anything out there, I don't know if things are perfect, and certainly my grandpa, who also loves cats, has concerns about birds and things like that as well. And I think that there's room for us to explore and grow there. I think that Jeff did a great job at kind of acknowledging some of the areas that we might explore when it comes to that. Mostly, I want to thank Councilmember Thompson for the work that he put into this and all the people that partnered with him along the way. It wouldn't have happened if he wouldn't have cared enough to do it. So thank you, and I'm happy to support tonight.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. So first, I want to appreciate TJ that you are willing to look at language around the feral cats and those that are identifiable, may not be feral. Also appreciate Patrick's comment. I was going to ask that we just ensure that our legal staff thinks that responsible breeders are protected, and if they're not, add whatever appropriate language would do that. Sounds like that's possible, so I appreciate that as well. And now, like my other fellow council members, want to thank TJ for his hard work on this. I know I was seen as one of the primary critics of this when it first came to us. Critics not in what it was trying to do, but because I'm such a policy geek, I am always worried about making sure we get things as perfect as possible, so that as we enact them, they're enforceable, that they are doing what we said we wanted to do, and that they've truly reflect the intent of the author. And TJ, I can only say that I believe this does this, not because of my objections, but because of your hard work. And you deserve a lot of credit for that. I too would like to acknowledge both Jen Patino for her hard work and Amanda Brown in our office, who's been shepherding this through. And she often doesn't get much credit when we do these policy initiatives, but it's her hard work behind the scenes that makes sure that all the T's get crossed and all the I's get dotted, so that when we pass these, they're actually good. So I look forward to seeing this on the reading calendar in 2 weeks, and look forward to having Boise be one of the communities, the community in Idaho, who can help lead the way on treating our animals better. Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Thank you. Congratulations, Councilman. I know you've worked a long time on this. Thank you for bringing it forward. I have to admit, I was a little surprised at all the talk about cats tonight. But one thing that I think is clear, especially in the last year that we've all lived through, is how important our animals are to us and what a special place they hold in all of our hearts. And for some of us, they are really, truly companion animals. There are people who live with mental illness, anxiety, depression, PTSD, and I would much rather be prescribed a cat or a dog than a pill. And so I would just ask, as you move forward and you work with legal on making any additions to what this final product is going to be, is that you consider the lens of equity, and that there are people who they don't have a lot of money. And there are people who might look at you buying the 16-pound bag of Atticat at Winco for $10 as abuse. It's not abuse. It's just what folks can afford. So I would just ask that, just to keep that in mind as we move forward, and to keep folks who have not a lot of means, but who very much love their animals.
All right.
Can I make one statement?
Yeah, you can close things up and then the clerk will call the roll.
Great. Hey, I just want to thank all my colleagues, the mayor, for your outspoken support for this tonight. And I just wanted to note, I think yet again, Boise is now setting the gold standard on another issue for the rest of the state to hopefully follow. Nice work.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Well, thank you all. Thanks everybody for joining this evening here in person as well as by Zoom. It was great to see you all. And with that,
Madam Mayor, move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.